There's been a lot of slander regarding the moon recently. Crimson moon this, blood moon that, pale moon there. I've had enough. My moon would never be associated with death. Never. Never, never, never. You guys know, we've been talking about all these mysteries recently, but perhaps one of the oldest in lore is where is the third moon sister? Now beware, fellas, for there is a moon sister denier among us. We'll see if he... if he reveals himself. The Moon Sisters are as enigmatic as they are ancient. They were perhaps some of the first gods to appear onto the scene in Tibet following the recreation of the world. They numbered 3 and their names were Arya, Sonnet, and Canon, and make no mistake, they were most certainly gods, as a Neopala Lotus description writes, quote, "In the oldest folk tales of this land, the great chariots of the moon goddesses once shone with a light that matched the sun. The Moon Sisters' existence coincided with the Seelie race. However, they are said to be even older than them. They are old. Older than even Rex Lapis himself, who is over 6,000 years old. Quote, long ago, 3 bright moons once hung high in the night sky. These 3 moons were sisters, their years numbering more than those of the Geo-Archon, and their birth predating the very bedrock upon which Liyue Harbor now rests. So forgets being older than Rex Lapis or the Seelie race, they are older than the very rocks that Liyue was built upon. So what I'm trying to emphasize is that these moons of bitches are some of the oldest beings in lore. Anyone get that joke? Moons of bitches, sons of bitches. Sovereigns of the night sky, the Moon Sisters love 2 things, each other and the stars of daybreak. These 3 luminous moons shared but one love, the stars of daybreak. Only at the fleeting moments when day and night converged could one of the 3 sisters pass the fading stars and gaze upon the chambers of the morning stars. Moments later, as the new dawn would break over the horizon, the carriage would quickly ferry the Night Sisters away. What they would do in the carriage is simple. They would, quote, navigate the heavens above in their silver carriage, alternating with one another thrice a month, and they did so right up until Apocalypse. The sisters resided in a lunar palace and would often leave it when nights came so as to wander around. Quote, when night came, they would leave the pearl-colored palace to roam the deserts, and Neopala lotuses would bloom at their feet. This cycle of existence, riding the silver carriage above the night sky, alternating the sisters, walking around Tibet, admiring daybreak, would all come to an abrupt end because of Apocalypse. You see, when the Seelie race finally came along, the Moon Sisters grew fond of them, so much so that when the ancestor of the Seelie race and a traveler from afar wanted to marry, quote, they swore an oath of union witnessed by the 3 sisters of the lunar palace. Soon after this unionship, a disaster would befall the Seelies that destroyed all they had built. The lovers would flee, but once the calamity caught up with them, their memories were wiped and they were doomed to be separated for all of eternity. The Seelie race then lost all of their forms, their intelligence, forever doomed to be wispy husks. Yet despite this, they still kept their love of guiding humanity and continue to do so to this very day. The Moon Sisters were not impervious to the calamity either. Quote, with time, disasters overturned the sovereign carriage and laid ruin to the halls of the stars. The 3 sisters of the nights turned against one another, leading to their eternal parting by death. Only one of their pale corpses now remains, ever shedding its cold light. However, it's important to keep in mind that while all the sisters have since parted following the catastrophe, that doesn't mean they're all dead. As a matter of fact, one Moon Sister seemingly survived the calamity, as the Moon Piercer polearm description writes, quote, ultimately, 2 moon wheels shattered into dust and disappeared. The last of the sisters was so overcome with sorrow that she would never leave her palace again. Which Moon Sister remains, Arya, Sonnet, or Canon, is unknown. Which Moon Sister's corpse lights up the sky is unknown, and what happened to the other dead sister is also unknown. And now over time, there's been plenty of candidates regarding who any of the Moon Sisters could be. Paimon, the Welkin Lady, hell, even the Shades. However, there's one person I wanted to bring up, if for no other reason than simply because she said something that's been making my pulmonary veins act up since she said it, and it's Nicole, who referenced being from the sky to the Traveler.
The voice from the sky, I fear that description is wrong. Though, not completely wrong.
That description is wrong, but not completely wrong. What you mean by that, nigga? What you trying to get into? Which master do you serve, bitch? Well, we don't know for sure whether the lunar palace was actually in the sky, It's been called a lunar palace. The Moon Sisters were often riding a silver carriage through the heavens, and watching daybreak is an activity often better observed on mountaintops, with altitude. So it wouldn't be entirely unreasonable to assume that the lunar palace has, its origin somewhere in the sky. It could be on a mountain, a rather high hill, like Olympus itself, or just, I don't know, that bitch was just floating in the sky with magic, like Celestia. One thing that heavily ties Nicole to I shouldn't say heavily, but just ties Nicole to the Seelie race is their shared love for guiding people. The Seelies were once envoys of the heavens, guiding humanity to live better, and although they are no longer capable of this, even in their reduced forms, they still guide humanity. And Nicole is noted by Alice as someone who also loves guiding people.
The guide who will never get lost is N, otherwise known as Nicole. You may not have encountered her yet, but she is a truly extraordinary woman who has made this world's direction and order her subject of study. Some of you may be fortunate enough to have already heard her voice. Like a prophetess, she will only speak to guide people toward the truth when a change has occurred in the world. She has a tendency to suddenly speak in someone's mind without any warning.
Being able to sense when changes have occurred to the world and being able to speak in people's minds do lend itself to her being a powerful individual. For reference, the only other people who know when Irminsul has been tampered with are Alice and the Descenders, like the Traveler, and the only other person who can freely speak in people's minds is Nahida, the God of Wisdom. However, there are some problems. Nicole's potential affiliation with the Seelie race doesn't necessarily mean she's in any way, shape, or form connected to the Moon Sisters, given while their fates eventually became intertwined, the Moon Sisters existed independent of the Seelie race, and from what we know thus far, never shared the same penchant for guiding humanity. Furthermore, being a powerful individual doesn't necessarily mean you're a god in Teyvat. Hell, the Hexenzirkel. Well, yes, they still have they had some fucking ordinary niggas who have long since died because they just had like a human who's just really good at writing books. They still have some of the most powerful individuals in Teyvat. Barbeloth, a visionary who can read the entire fate of the world. Alice, who's been described as nigh omnipotent, so it would make sense that Nicole also has some powers that lends itself to being as like a god. This is despite the fact that they've never been called gods once. As a matter of fact, they tried to challenge a god. In actuality, they just appear to be witches. Was adultery? Burn the witch! Burn the witch! So let's pivot. Let's operate under the assumption that the final Moon Sister still holds up in her palace and filled with grief. Well, it just so happens we know of a mysterious lady who just so happened to be in a gray palace in Seelie ruins in the Dark Sea, singing about a fallen race. You know what else is gray? The moon. What color do we think the lunar palace would be? The moon. Quote, "This wasteland is said to be a land beyond the dominion of the deities, inhabited only by the grotesquely ghastly remains of fallen gods. The former palaces of the Seelies now stand empty. So when the solitary old wolf passed by a gray palace and heard the sound of music coming from within, it caught its attention. Finally, he came to an inner room where he saw a fair maiden strumming at her instrument. Her skin was ashen white, and her head was bowed down, her slender fingers gently stroking the fragile strings of the lute as she played a long-forgotten and mournful melody. The wolf sat down in front of the pale young maiden and forgot all about the pain of hunger, thirst, and loneliness for a short while as it listened in silence to her song. The chirping of insects on a long-gone autumn night is the chorus of exiles, singing mankind's most ancient song as they live out their plight. Stripped of all that the body once held close and the soul once held dear, song and memories are all that now remain of yesteryear. The last singers, the first Seelie, they played their final tune in the halls of angels. The tiny Seelie playing in the forest were also drawn to the young maiden's tunes and flocked to her to pay their respects. "What is this song that you play?" the wolf asked, puzzled, for it understood every line, every word, every syllable she spoke, and yet hers was a language that it had never heard before, quite unlike that of any other living being. "A song of the Seelies," replied the pale young maiden in a soft voice. "Long, long ago we wrote this song for the human savages, yet now We sing it to mourn our own fates. What an odd maiden. Consider her situation. She's in the middle of ruins in the dark sea, seemingly uncaring, holds up in a great palace, singing a song about the Seelie race. And other Seelies flock to her out of respect. She's fond of singing and referred to herself as part of the Seelie race, yet, despite this, has kept her form, something only Nabu Malikata has done, but presumably did so because she was a god. I wonder, were the Moon Sisters gods? Oh my god, they were. Was the remaining Moon Sister said to be holed up in a palace? Oh my god, she was. Were the Moon Sisters fond of singing? Well, aside from their names being aria, sonnet, and canon having to do with melodies, quote, the Moons were daughters of prose and song. Oh my god. Furthermore, I dare even say that the song the maiden is singing resembles an aria. I say this for two reasons. One, it's not a canon. It just isn't. For example, the most well-known canon is just like, row, row, row your boats. Just because canons have to do with matching melodies and you need two people. It's not a fucking canon. It doesn't match the rhyme scheme of a sonnet, so this just leaves aria. An aria is typically a solo piece done apart of a larger orchestra, and their purpose is often to explore the mental state of the character, so they often dive into topics such as love, desire, and even sorrow and loss. While that's, a rampant speculation on my parts, I wonder if there's a character in Teyvat that's been described as uncaring, a character with whom we've seen sing during times of sorrow, a character herself bearing resemblance to the Seelie race. Could Columbina be the final remaining Moon Sister whose true name is Aria? Maybe, again, the Aria part is just like rampant speculation on my behalf, but I do think Damselette's connection to the Moon Sisters and Seelie race should not go understated. I personally like the idea that Damselette is a Moon Sister. It neatly ties up her having the strength of a god, would give her a reason to fight the heavens, would explain the Seelie imagery we see regarding her, and if she was the one singing in the Great Palace, in the Dark Sea, would perfectly match with where the last Moon Sister should be. Before, the greatest hustler in the universe, Piero, just scooped her up. Or maybe Arlecchino. I guess it being Arlecchino would make more sense, but we'll see. I'm sure we'll get our first bit of Columbina lore in the Knave's voice line soon enough. See, that's the real exciting part about 4.6. It's not all that other worthless shit. It's the Columbina lore that we will surely be getting, man.